Welcome back. You're listening to Cindy Laverty Show on CRN Digital Talk Radio, and I thank you for joining me. My guest today is Angela Schaefers, and she's in studio with me. You know, you can say whatever you want about social media, but Angela and I found each other on Facebook, and we have never met until today. So I don't know how long we've actually been following each other. I think it's almost about a year.
Mm-hmm, I think so.
And I think you're in for a real treat. Angela is a radio talk show host of Your Story Matters. She's a speaker and a writer, but her personal story is so much more than what her bio says about her. And I want her to be the one to tell you the story. Angela, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so excited that we did get to meet in person.
I know, because we've been going back and forth on
Yes.
Facebook for a while now. And now I guess we'll be doing that on Twitter too, right?
That's right.
You can actually find Angela on Facebook at what's your Facebook?
Angela Schaefers, radio personality, speaker, and writer, and then Your Story Matters radio show also has
its own page.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. So you have an incredibly compelling story, and you were not always doing the kind of work that you're doing today. Tell us how all of this came to be.
Well, it actually started about 8 years ago when I decided to write my story for my children. And the reason I decided to do that was I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I was told that I didn't have long to live. So my kids were a lot younger then, and I thought, how can I leave them
They were teenagers, right?
Actually, one was a toddler, and one was in junior high, and one was in high school. So they were pretty young back then.
Okay.
And I wanted to find a way to leave them some sort of memory about me, to tell them where I had been, why I was who I was based on my experiences and my life story. So I did write my story. A friend of mine looked over it for me to make sure it was, well enough for them and something that they could understand. And she said, this is something you have to share with the world. And of course, I thought, no way. This is my personal story.
And at this time, you're writing this, and you have stage 4 cancer.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're thinking that you're not going to be sitting here on the Cindy Laverty Show today.
I did not think so, but I'm glad to be here.
Me too. Me too.
So yes, I wrote the story. A lot of things occurred that turned it into an opportunity to publish it as a book. I have an artist friend who made the cover for me. I took it to a printer, and before you know it, I was out speaking at small groups and organizations, churches. My local bookstore in Tampa Bay had me do a book signing, and I was selling my book and sharing my story with a great deal of people.
And you are cured.
No, I'm not cured. I'm not cancer-free.
Okay.
I still have cancer and some tumors within my body. After the first year, I decided, well, I haven't died, so maybe I should just start living like I'm living.
Right.
And not focus on the dying part. Of course, I made all the preparations necessary and got that all resolved as far as the legalities of it all and making plans for my children. But life went on for me. One way or another, I was able to get up, and still am, every day and continue to live my life.
So how did you go from grief to grace? Because I think, we talk a lot about that on this show, and of course all that ties into the subject of care. Mm-hmm. But when you have clearly, sitting here looking at you, given the glow in your eye and the radiance in your face, you have made that leap. Mm-hmm. How did you do that? Was there a process?
It is. It is a process. In my first book, I shared about my childhood. It was pretty traumatic. There was a lot of abuse and dysfunction, and a lot of things that I had to get over as an adult, because when you go through certain things as a child, you tend to carry a lot of shame and guilt. And that,
and it stays with us for a very long time.
And that affects the choices we make as an adult. That affects how we think of ourselves. That affects our self-esteem, our self-confidence.
Right.
So there was years of processing all that I had been through, of some counseling, self-reflection, journaling. There were so many things that I did.
You're a big advocate for journaling, right?
I am, absolutely. In the past, I've been a counselor. I have a master's degree in counseling, and one thing I've told almost every client is that the best thing to do is start writing. And write like no one will be able to see that writing.
Right.
Tell the truth, let it all out. Say whatever you want to say, because that in itself reveals your story, your experiences, and then you can start to learn from them. You can see the patterns in that. You can see the areas where you really need to heal, where there's obstacles, where there's places in your story that are preventing you from living the life that you want to live.
Right, and we all have these different voices in our head. You know, we have the little girl voice or the little boy voice, and we have the adult voice, we have the protector voice. I think when you journal, it's amazing how those different voices start showing up for you.
Absolutely. There's so many dynamics to the human psyche, and it's really hard to get them all out and develop them and work on them unless we have them out in the world, so to speak, written out or videoed or spoken in some way.
Right. So how long was this process for you? Because clearly, I mean, you're a very gracious, graceful,
Oh, thank you.
vibrant human being.
I think it's really been probably since I became a young adult, maybe in my late 20s, I started to change. There was a very traumatic event. My first husband, who was the love of my life and my high school sweetheart and best friend, passed away when we were 27.
Oh my gosh.
So that was probably the spark of really wanting to work on these things that I felt were holding me back and affecting me in a negative way. And of course, my first child at the time, my daughter. And so it was real motivation for me to say, where am I at now at this point in my life? The tragedy was so huge for me and the loss was so disheartening. I didn't want to be here without him.
Right,
But I knew
right.
I wanted to take care of my daughter and do the best thing for her. And so that was the beginning of the process. And of course, without aging myself, that was quite a few years ago. And I've just gone on as much as I can to unravel the things that have happened to me, my feelings, deal with my thoughts, deal with my experiences. And sometimes we have to continue to do that. I don't think there's an ending point where you just say, okay, I'm healed, I'm free.
No,
You
they're
know?
definitely, well, enlightened people are not finished healing or
Exactly.
growing.
Right.
But, you know, isn't it interesting how I've heard this so many times on this show, and having been a single mother myself, there is that incredible bond and tie to your child, and it is what keeps you going on when you think you can't. I mean, I can remember going in and looking at my daughter when she was sleeping and she was just a little tiny thing, and I'd be like, okay, I can do this. I can do that. I don't know if I could do this for me. I can do this for you.
That's right.
And there's just an amazing strength that comes from that. And
Yes.
sometimes I think my daughter just doesn't understand.
Maybe not now, but she will. But that's a good point, because when I was first diagnosed with the cancer, I'll admit during that first year, I was often suicidal. I mean, I just thought, how can this be happening after all that I had lived through?
Right.
I was so desperate to think that my life was going to end. And I didn't care so much about me, but I wanted to obviously be with my children. But in turn, they were the ones that made me feel like you have to keep going on. You can't give up. You have to have hope. You have to have faith.
Right. Well, and there's that whole interesting thing about how we don't know what life has in store for us. I mean, it's just this amazing thing that, I mean, I used to work in corporate America. I didn't know I was going to be doing caregiving. But, when we come back from break, I want to talk about how your life changed with what was given to you by God, the universe, whatever it is that, that you happen to believe. So are you open to doing that?
Absolutely.
All right. Stay with us. You're listening to the Cindy Laverty Show. I'll be right back with my guest, Angela Schaefers.